Hello, my name is Libertas. I am an award-winning constitutional historian. You can go to our website called libertyman.online. That's libertyman.online and see many of my teachings and works and books and different things. And it's a work in progress, but it's going to be really, really massive, I can assure you. So today we're going to look at the 17th Amendment. This is where the Senate changed the way it was elected. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And what's the original intent? So with that, let's get started. The original wording of the Senate is Article 1, Section 3. So this is the third section of the U.S. Constitution. And it says, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The 17th Amendment says that the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, exact same thing as before, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. So, sounds like a good idea, but is it? Does it line up with the original intent of the Constitution, or did something come about to change the way we as Americans think about our country? So Dr. Joseph Story, a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States in 1833, produced a book with the help of the Supreme Court to lay out everything about the Constitution and how it was put together and how it was developed. And it says here, in this respect, comparing the Senate to the House of Representatives gives you a good idea of what the Senate's job is. It says, in this respect, there is a marked contrast between the Senate and the House of Representatives. In the latter, the House of Representatives, there is a representation of the people according to the relative population of each state upon a given basis. In the former, each state in its political capacity is represented on a footing of perfect equality, like a Congress of sovereigns or ambassadors, or like an assembly of peers. The Senate is comprised of ambassadors for the states, not a representation of the individual citizen. 2 distinctly different classifications of representation. You have to understand what was going on after the revolution. Up until that point, every Congress or every organization that met was represented by the states, and each state had 1 vote. Same thing with the Articles of Confederation, which was a disaster. And so they came together and knew that what worked during the revolution was not working now. So what do we do to change things? The Declaration of Independence speaks of when the purposes of government don't meet the needs of the people, it's the right of the needs of the people to amend it or abolish it to their liking and their needs. So the main argument was, and I use Rhode Island as an example because it's so tiny, they were concerned that they would have no representation in the government because they were so small, and that states like Virginia and Pennsylvania would just walk all over them. And there were basically four big states. There was Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts didn't have the land mass, but it did have the people. So there was a big conflict, and there was only a few major conflicts in the Constitutional Convention. And it was, how was the legislature going to be set up was by far the biggest conflict. So the compromise was, if the House is to be proportional to the relative size and wealth and population of the states, the Senate should be fixed upon an absolute equality as the representative of state sovereignty. So here again, the representatives, the House of Representatives, of which there are 435, based on the population of the states. California, I think, has 53 or 50. So they have over 50 congressmen. The state of Mississippi, where I live, we have 4. Wyoming has 1 because of the population. There's more people. Well, there was when I first wrote my book 10 years ago. If there's more people in the state of Mississippi, in my county in Mississippi, than there were in the state of Wyoming at that time. So, but they guaranteed at least 1 vote. So same thing with sparsely populated states like the Dakotas and possibly even Montana. I'm not sure about Montana. Maybe even Alaska. They only have 1 representative. But with the Senate, each state is represented equally with 2. So in theory, the citizens of, say, Wyoming has more power in the Senate than does California, based on, per person. But anyway, there's the US Constitution is a union of independent and sovereign states. A sovereign state is a geographical boundary that has a constitution and form of government, that has some form of executive, legislative, and judicial responsibilities. So Mississippi, according to Article 4, Section 3 of the US Constitution, is an independent and sovereign state. So is whatever state that you may live in the United States of America. So the Senate is a collection of the ambassadors of the 50 sovereign states that are unified under this one federal government. You follow me? So but the way it was chosen is one of really great importance. Joseph Story goes on to explain that if both institutions are composed of the same spirit's impulses, then both houses will act as the other does, and each will be led by the same common influence of ambition, intrigue, or passion, to the same disregard of the public interest and the same indifference to the prostration of private rights. It will only be a duplication of the evils of oppression and rashness, with a duplication of obstructions to effective redress. In this view, the organization of the Senate becomes of inestimable value. It represents the voice, not of a district, but of a state. Not of one state, but of all of the states. Not to the interest of one state, but of all the chosen pursuits of a predominant population in one state, but of all the pursuits in all the states. The genius part of this also was the different functions, but there are checks and balance on the two. At first, a law first has to pass the House of Representatives, which is the will of the people. It's more democratic in nature because of the will of the people. But you have sectional interests, like the South back then, especially the South and the North disagreed diametrically on the issue of slavery, which fortunately we've solved that one now. But the western part of the United States doesn't think like the middle of the country. The southern part of the country doesn't think the same as the way they do in New England. The Midwest, it has its own different flavor and flair and culture. The Southwest has its own flavor, flair, and culture. So all of these things have to come together to get something passed. Well, the Senate, on the other hand, is an ambassador for the states. And so there's a checks and balances there that's very important. But in essence and in theory, it's supposed to work along the lines of the way John Locke described it in his Two Treatises of Government, in that you have to have certain checks and balances in the way things work. But somebody has to be in charge and in control. But man's nature, according to Jeremiah, is not good. So if you don't have some type of restraints in there, but also with the Senate, the people choose who's going to represent them and that's closest to them. So those people are going to elect somebody that's going to represent their ideas. Well, in the state legislature, the citizens, it's a smaller group of people electing people to their state legislature. And so there's a smaller defined group of people theoretically choosing the brightest and the wisest from their district. In Mississippi, we have 122 representatives for a state that has a population of about 3 million. So, but the people that are chosen by each district is supposed to be the brightest and the wisest, the person that represents the ideals and the morals and the goals of their local thing. So the brightest and the smartest that they have to offer from their district collectively make the legislature in our state. And then you have the Senate, which is also chosen by the people, but it's fewer districts that cover a broader scope of people, but it's there for a checks and balance. So originally, the founding fathers wanted the Senate as ambassadors for the state to be elected by the best and the brightest that the state has to offer. So if the best and the brightest are electing the best and the brightest out of their peers and their social groups and strata, then the Senate is going to be composed of, second only to the President of the United States, the best and the brightest that their state has to offer. And they represent the state's issues more so than the people's issues. So if you elect the Senate by the same demographic of people, then that checks and balances breaks down, because the same group of people are going to be electing the same mentality of people to both houses. So you lose that sense of checks and balances. Now, what's the big deal? Well, I'll tell you the big deal, and it's called progressivism and not republicanism. Not the founding principles of endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights and the laws of nature and nature's God established in the Declaration of Independence. With that in mind, you see in 1869, a man named Charles William Eliot came on board as president of Harvard, and he said, we are no longer going to look to America for our ideals. we are going to become progressive and we are going to look to Europe for our ideals. So the first thing that he did was change um, the crest of Harvard from Christo et Ecclesia Veritas to just Veritas. So Christo et Ecclesia is Greek for Christ in the church is truth. So now we're going to look for truth outside of Christ in the church. One of Charles William Eliot's star students was a guy named Theodore Roosevelt. One of the things that Charles William Eliot started doing was reintroducing words to describe American government. Instead of using a republic and a union of independent republics, which is what the European Union is designed by, from that example, but he started introducing the term democracy. Democracy instead of republic, the will of the people instead of the rule of the law or the Constitution. So, because remember, he said he wanted to fundamentally change the country. And so when Theodore Roosevelt came along, he wrote a progressive party platform. And this is one of the stated goals of that. And it's about progressivism and not republicanism. So here's what he said is one of the goals for the progressive movement. This is a president of the United States, mind you. The National Progressive Party, committed to the principles of government by a self-controlled democracy, expressing its will through representatives of the people, pledges itself to secure such alterations in the fundamental law of the several states and of the United States as shall ensure the representative character of the government. Pay attention. In particular, the party declares for direct primaries for the nomination of state and national officers, for nationwide preferential primaries of candidates for the presidency, for the direct election of United States senators by the people, and we urge on the states the policy of the short ballot with responsibility to the people secured by the initiative, referendum, and recall. So there you have it. They want to fundamentally change America, and one of the prescribed steps in doing so is to get the senators to be elected by the people and not the states. So what that does is the idea of ambassadors from 50 independent and sovereign countries, union of countries, states, now becomes another avenue for the representation of just the people. It takes the state and its authority and its responsibility out of the equation. So hopefully that gives you some initiative, but the basis of this and the foundation of this is designed purposefully by people who call themselves progressives that are looking for truth outside of the laws of nature and nature's God declared in the Declaration of Independence. So you tell me if that was a good idea or not. I'm just the teacher, and that's the truth, folks. So start discussing things along those terms and see if it's working for us. Anyway, God bless. Have a great night and a great day.